Hi, I'm Haley, and today is a great day because I'm going to be making vanilla cake. I'm going to show you all the tricks to make your vanilla cake super fluffy and moist and delicious. So let's get started. So the recipe I'm using uses buttermilk, but if you don't have buttermilk, you can create a substitute by taking milk and adding white vinegar into it. So I've got 2/3 cup of whole milk, and then I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of white vinegar. And I'm just going to stir these around. And I'm going to let this sit for about 5 minutes, so you want to do that first. The next thing we're going to mix together are the dry ingredients. This part is super important because most people overmeasure their flour. I am guilty of this as well. I just recently found out that scooping your flour out uses way too much flour, and that's the reason why you get a dense cake most of the time. This is 188 grams of flour, but if you don't have a scale, then just use 1.5 cups of flour, but make sure that when you're measuring it, you don't like scoop it with the cup. You spoon the flour into the measuring cup and you level it off, and that should give you the right amount. So I'm going to whisk together my flour with 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. Now I've mixed my dry ingredients together really well, and I'm going to come over to my stand mixer, so whisking tin, or you can use a hand mixer, and I'm going to combine 1/4 cup of oil, 3/4 cup of sugar, and 1/4 cup of soft unsalted butter. It's important for all your ingredients to be at room temperature. That way they all combine well. And I'm going to beat that all together. Alright, and once you've creamed your butters and sugars and oils really well, make sure that you scrape down your bowl and everything is fully combined. Whew, it's kind of grainy. Now I'm going to add in 2 eggs, one at a time, and these are room temperature. Now a lot of times when you're baking a cake, you don't think to set out your eggs ahead of time and then you have to wait for them. So I put mine in a bowl of warm water and just let them sit for a few minutes, and then ta-da, they're room temperature. So I'm going to crack those in and mix them in one at a time. Alright, you want to make sure your eggs are really well mixed in, and after you crack in all the eggs, wash your hands. Now I'm adding in 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. There's nothing really special about this step except it's a vanilla cake, so the vanilla is very important, and I always do a little bit extra vanilla. Oop. How does this work? There we go. And I'm gonna mix that in. All right, now I've mixed in my vanilla, and I'm going to add in the flour mixture and the buttermilk, or your buttermilk substitute, and I'm gonna add them in alternating. So I'm gonna start with some flour in there and turn on the mixer. And once the flour gets mixed in, I'm gonna add a little bit of the buttermilk, and I'm gonna keep doing that back and forth. But make sure you don't over mix it right now. Also, something I almost forgot to mention, like the rest of your other ingredients, your buttermilk needs to be at room temperature for it to fully incorporate correctly. Now, after you mix in the last of your flour, just take your spatula and scrape down the sides and the bottom of your bowl to make sure it's all fully incorporated. This looks so pretty and it's done now. So now we get to bake it. I'm super excited, but once again, do not overmix it. So the next thing I'm going to do is prepare my pan by lining it with parchment and oiling it. The best way to line it with parchment is just get a square of parchment and then trace a circle using the bottom of the pan. And then you have your circle and you can just cut it out. And it's so easy. And I'm going to grease it with some vegetable oil. And then I'm going to put my little parchment square on the bottom, and it's all ready. I'm using a 7-inch pan, and I'm going to pour about half of my batter in there. Now I'm going to bake my cake. My oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm going to put it in there for about 30 minutes or until a toothpick comes out mostly clean or with a few moist crumbs. And then before you frost it, make sure that you let it cool completely. Okay, my cake is out of the oven and it's completely cooled down now. I ended up just pouring it all into one cake round, and it's a really pretty cake. I leveled off the top, but you totally don't have to. It's just going to make a 1-layer cake, and then I'm gonna flip it over onto this and take off the parchment. And now I'm going to frost it. This is going to be a red, white, and blue cake for 4th of July. So I'm using a basic vanilla frosting, and I split it into 3 bowls, and then I'm gonna dye each of them a different color. One's going to be white, one's going to be red, and one's going to be blue, and I'm going to make the American flag on my cake. Half price! The dogs, they're surrounding me because I have cake. So for my frosting, I'm going to be piping it all out, which makes it a lot easier to control the frosting. And a great way to put your frosting in a piping bag is to put your piping bag over a tall cup, and then you can just scoop it out, and it's really easy. I'll link the frosting recipe that I used in the description below. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do for the American flag cake is get my white frosting and just pipe a line halfway across. I mean, halfway up the cake, all the way across. And then after you pass the first line, look and see how thick your frosting line is. It's about a finger thick, so then I'm gonna put a finger there, and I'm gonna start right there again with my white frosting, because you wanna leave space for the red stripes. And I'm just gonna keep doing this until I get to the bottom of the cake, but don't do the top half yet, because that's where we're gonna put the blue corner and the stars. And see, this corner right here is going to be the blue corner, and then I'm going to continue my stripes this way with the white. So I'm gonna do a line of white, but only halfway across the cake this time. Perfect. Now it's time for the red frosting. All right, I've got my piping bag with my red frosting, and you're going to have to use a lot of red dye to dye your frosting red. I'm just letting you know now. Now all the spaces in between the white stripes, I'm going to fill those in with red frosting, except for this little corner right here, that's for the blue. Make sure you don't fill that in. Now I have my blue frosting in my piping bag, and we finally get to fill in that little corner right there. I'm just going to cover it in frosting. And finally, for the last step, the stars, which I'm going to put on the blue. It already looks so good. This is so exciting. Once again, I'm using vanilla frosting. It's white, it's in my piping bag, and I've got a little tip on it. And I'm just gonna pipe little stars? They're little dots, actually. I can't fit that many, but I'm gonna fit as many as I can. Okay, I have fit 14 stars on my American flag. I'm not really sure what I could call that. It's definitely not the 50 states, but it's 14, and at least I got the stars on there. It looks great, and now I'm going to try it. This cake is so moist. It's really great. So as long as you don't over bake it, and make sure you cover it when you're not eating it or frosting it, and then it'll turn out really great and super moist and fluffy, just like mine did. Well, thank you so much for baking with me today. I hope this video was helpful and it helped you make a super moist and fluffy vanilla cake. Or maybe you didn't make a vanilla cake, but you decorated another cake like the American flag, which would be a great idea because this looks really cool. It's a great way to make your 4th of July extra special because let's be honest, cake makes everything better. So I'll see you next time on You're Stirring It Wrong. Happy 4th of July!
What are you gonna do?
You're on camera.
I'm not afraid.